Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Anara Tabashaliva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any question to our guest. Today's guest will be introduced by Professor Victor Afet.
Thank you very much, Anara. I'm glad to introduce our today's guest at 143rd week of MUkraine podcast. We welcome Larry Poltavtsev from Virginia, USA, and he will talk on Russia rogue social media campaigns against Ukraine, how disinformation fuels conflict and undermines democracy. Mr. Poltavtsev will tell more about himself. He is originally from Russia, from the city of Rostov, emigrated to the USA many years ago, back in 1991, and he is a physical chemist, a software engineer, and an activist supporting Ukraine's fight and human rights. Please, Larry, the screen is yours. The microphone is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's my privilege to be here, and I highly appreciate this opportunity. Just to briefly introduce myself, I came to the United States back in 1991, and I went for my PhD program in physical chemistry at the University of North Carolina, and I studied there, and I had an opportunity to teach there. And later I worked at the Research Triangle Park as a physical chemist for the environmental lab. And later on, I accepted a position with Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I moved over there, and I switched to IT, and I eventually started my own IT business, and right now I have an IT consulting company and an online IT school where we help people to transition from non-IT to IT specialties such as software testing, cybersecurity, to name the few. And when the war started in 2022, we created a special program for Ukrainian refugees coming on U4U visas so that they can get settled in the United States and get a new jobs and new background and new education, new credentials, and we help them with their career development. So that's very important, and we found programs that allow them to do that at free of charge. So that's what we are doing for the Ukrainian community ever since. And I had a privilege and an opportunity to work with a number of human rights organizations in Washington, D.C., and we worked for such important initiatives as Magnitsky Act initiative, and we implemented sanctions against a number of Russian authority figures, and I'm very proud to be part of that initiative. And we worked closely with Senator Cardin, and I had the privilege to meet with President Obama back in the day, and we worked very hard on securing sanctions against rogue Russian officials, even before Crimea annexation happened. So, but nowadays I'm researching internet, and I'm looking at the activities that are directed against people who live in America, American citizens, and all these rogue activities that Russian Federation is launching against our country. And I just wanted to use this opportunity to bring it up. And unfortunately, I see very little effort in the media or even on the social networks, in the public space. Uh, I see very little mentioning of that. There are some, it's very vague. There are no details, there is no context, just vaguely mentioning that, oh, well, Russia interferes with our elections, Russia does this, Russia does that, doesn't give people real sense of the scope and the scale of what is going on in that world. And I think that we severely underestimate and underappreciate how many millions, well, I would rather say hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested in those initiatives. So I'd like to discuss that in more details, if I may, and I'd like to share the PowerPoint presentation that we've prepared for this, and so that we can approach that in a more organized way. So if I may share my screen, I'll do that right now, and hopefully, let me see how to do that. And all right. All right. Well, yeah, this is what I wanted to discuss. Russia's rogue social media campaigns against Ukraine. Naturally, one of the main focuses for Russia nowadays, now that the elections are over, well, they keep concentrating on how to undermine Ukraine. And it may not be the only goal, obviously, because they have much broader goals, and they would like to undermine all Western democracies and each democracy individually. So they're attacking us collectively as well as individually and at many levels, not necessarily regarding one issue. Well, this podcast is naturally specifically deals with issues that are related to Ukraine, and I think it's extremely important right now. And that's why I feel that we need to discuss that in more details. So, but you will see that it goes much broader than that, right? So let's just briefly take an overview of what Russia's strategic use of social media means and how they spread propaganda and disinformation. So basically, they are doing it consistently and for many years. And I'm at loss why our mainstream media and the government agencies do not publicize that and discuss it much more broadly. Is What are the reasons for that? I fail to understand that. Are they afraid to show the public that we are powerless in front of this threat? Or, I really do not understand the reasoning behind throwing this into the corner and not talking much about that. But anyway, let's talk about their strategic usage of social media. So and how they do it. Well, Obviously, number one strategy is to use troll farms, so-called troll farms and fake accounts. How do they do that? Well, they actually have numerous office buildings filled with actual employees who are coming to work every day to position themselves as average Americans, to position themselves as average German citizens, French citizens, and so forth, and actively engage and participate in the online discussions. So that's what troll farms do. How do they do that? Well, they do it by creating fake accounts on our social networks, and that's how they participate. But again, it goes much deeper than that. Uh, I know for a fact that there are uh, software companies that produce software, specialized software for them that allows a single person to manage and maintain simultaneously multiple accounts, multiple profiles on every network. So, uh, say we are talking about Facebook, there is a specialized software that would enable such worker at the troll farm to manage, say, 100 or 500 accounts uh, simultaneously by themselves. So, in other words, one person has like 500 accounts and they post and they engage in discussions, and these online tools make it very convenient for them to do that. And using such accounts, they amplify divisive narratives, they target specific demographics and spread false or misleading information. So that's how they do it. The second uh, popular tool are bots and automatic amplification. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but you probably can imagine that they're using automated accounts, bots, and they amplify propaganda to make it appear popular or widely accepted than it truly is. So it creates like an echo chamber, really, and reinforces their disinformation campaigns. And then, of course, targeted polarization. Russian campaigns often they exploit existing social, political, and cultural divides by promoting extreme views. And we all know how it works. Uh, Another major strategy is manipulation of global events. And Russia is using social media to influence international events, including elections, protests, conflicts. One example is the 2016 US presidential election. Um, and another instrument that they have and strategy that they have planting deep fakes and misinformation. So obviously, advances in AI and all other, tools that are at their disposal allows them to produce fake videos and images, and then they share them on social platforms and manipulate perception. Um, and and the one more strategy is hybrid campaigns, when social media operations are often just a part of a larger hybrid warfare campaign coordinated with traditional media, cyber attacks, on the ground operations. So this is all designed to maximize the impact. And finally, there is exploitation of algorithms. Russian operatives exploit social media algorithms. They study how our networks are operating, social networks are operating, as to maximize the visibility for what they're doing, and they capitalize on sensationalism, controversial topics, so and they trigger the spread of that disinformation. So that's how they're doing it, and that's how they're effectively using these tools for any particular topics. And of course, Ukraine and undermining Ukraine is one of the number one priorities for them. That is the one of the main focus for them, naturally. So well, I understand that they invest hundreds of millions of dollars in such disinformation campaigns, and they're using uh, multiple channels such as Russia Today, Sputnik, um, and obviously we already mentioned social media troll farms and fake news websites, and we're going to talk about the latter, the fake news websites, a little bit later in much more details, because that is very important. So this is how they are doing it. Uh, what is troubling me, and I'm sure what's troubling many other people, is that they are constantly evolving, and it seems like our society is like one or even two steps behind them. The thing is, what I see as a trend is that they are no longer attempting to do the same type of interference that we've seen back in 2016. They became much smarter than that, and and of course AI is actually helping them a lot as well. So that is what is very, very troubling right now. And to give you just a sense, I understood that Russia Today annual budget exceeded $280 million, and it covers not only the United States, but over 100 countries, and they tailor their broadcast for each region or each national situation and so forth, right? So, and those troll farms, each farm, uh, may have a budget, estimated budget of 1 million euros, which would be roughly, $1.1 million, so we're very, very close anyway. But this is just for one farm. So, and I'd like you to take a note of that number, because just in a few minutes we're going to talk about that, because that would be very important to understand the scope of the budget and what it would be necessary to run such operation, right? So that's what's going on. And with this, I would like to bring a particular example that is relevant specifically for Ukraine and for many other causes, obviously, as well. Uh, I read about it in the local newspaper first. Well, it's not a I mean, it's a regional newspaper. It's a large newspaper called Sun Sentinel, and it covers the entire South Florida, which is heavily populated region. But then it was published in many other places, including mentioning in New York Times. And finally, the New York Times journalist wrote a very nice article for WLRN, which is the affiliate of PBS, Public Broadcast Radio. And it's the case about the John Mark Dugan, and this is ex-Florida deputy, deputy sheriff, and he became Russian propagandist, and he is pushing Russian propaganda even today. I mean, yes, he fled to Russia and he got a political asylum there, but nevertheless, uh, I do believe that his case didn't receive enough light in the United States. It hasn't been discussed widely. Yes, it was definitely mentioned in several publications, but I think it's much broader than that. I would like to understand how many undiscovered John Mark Dugans we still have left in the United States, and they are operating freely and undetected. Um, it's just one case that we're aware about, but who is investigating other situations? That is my question, and that's why I feel that our society and our democracy is in danger. So, but let me share with you another screen and just show you the actual article, and so that you can see. Okay. You see, this man was a sheriff's deputy in Palm Beach County, and obviously, as you can imagine, Palm Beach County is one of the very important counties in our country, because let's not forget that pretty much every influential politician, celebrity, businessman probably have their second, third, fourth, I don't know, fifth home in Palm Beach County. This is where people are coming to during winter to celebrate Christmas, and obviously the sheriff's office providing security for those people. So can you imagine that this person, well, aside from his illicit activities, he also had access to very important people, very influential people in our society as well. So the article doesn't mention that, but we can connect those dots ourselves, right? I mean, so it goes much deeper than that. So anyway, um, he was a deputy sheriff, like I said, in Palm Beach County, and he committed multiple uh, illegal activities, not only in Florida, but also in Maine. As a matter of fact, I'm puzzled how and why this person became a deputy sheriff in such important county in the United States, because his uh, previous uh, service record with police, well, for the I would find it dubious and very very interesting, right? So I mean, I employ people myself for my businesses, and if I saw such history, I probably wouldn't hire such person for my company, because I mean, he served in Maine before he got his position in Florida, and in Maine he was uh, he had some allegations of the sexual assault, and that was the reason why he quit his job in Maine. So why would Palm Beach County, Florida, even consider hiring such unreliable person? Well, but that's beyond the point. While he was a deputy sheriff here in Florida, um, he did several illegal activities. For example, he sent voters email posing as a county commissioner and urged them to oppose the re-election of the sheriff, right? Well, which is obviously illegal. Later, he masqueraded online as a Russian tech worker, and he leaked confidential information about, his department and sheriff's department and his colleagues, which is, I think, is very serious violation of the law, right? So, and he even positioned himself as a fictional New York City heir, uh, a woman called Jessica. So, and again, he divulged improper conduct, at his own department and things like that. So, but at the end, you can read this article. I will happy to share this link with you. But at the end, uh, he set up 160 fake websites that mimic news outlets in the United States, Britain, and France. Well, the thing is that these fake websites spread and pushed propaganda to all Americans, and they generated 37 million views. And you can see that he had over 8,000 posts and whatever. So this is mind-boggling. The thing is that, again, I highly appreciate that the journalist took time to write this wonderful article. Yes, we need to talk about it. But again, I'm disappointed that I do not see there additional points, very important points. The thing is that the deputy sheriff's compensation is not a mystery. I mean, obviously, as a public official, we have access to that, right? So, why the journalist failed to mention that to set up 160 fake websites and successfully run them, a person would need a budget of, probably tens of millions of dollars, and to employ, at least hundreds of workers, right? So this is exactly what Russia is doing. So he already, it's not impossible to accomplish such tasks uh, using the budget that is available on the deputy sheriff's salary. I'm sorry, this is not possible. I mean, for example, I run an online IT school, and we also, run online campaigns promoting the school, right? So I'm sorry, but I know how much is needed to generate, say, 10,000 views, right? So to generate 37 million views would require an enormous budget that is possible to be covered either by the foreign state actor or Fortune 500 corporation, right? So a private person or even a small business wouldn't be able to generate that. So my question is to all of us, and specifically to our authorities, how come an operation of such scale can go undetected? I mean, the movement of funds, the movement of money that is required for such scalable operation is mind-boggling, right? So, I mean, it's not a small potato that escapes undetected. Why we do not have better system, law enforcement, to trace such things? And that's what disappoints me with all these discoveries, right? And I don't know why nobody is asking that question and why nobody is interested in setting up some kind of a meaningful system to prevent this from happening in the future, right? So let's take a look at what that person did. He set up fake news resources in a very shrewd and smart way. In other words, basically, you know, he or whoever was working for him, with him, uh, did historical research, and they found publications that existed some time ago in the United States. For example, like the Boston Times, right? I mean, if you go to the Wikipedia, and I hope you see my screen, you can see that, yes, the Boston Times publication did exist from 1826 to 1933, right? So that sort of give them a legitimacy or some kind of appearance of being legitimate. And setting up such resources and also mimicking existing websites such like The Guardian or San Francisco Chronicle, they basically pushed baseless allegations and baseless information, misinformation, specifically about the Ukrainian's President Volodymyr Zelensky, alleging that he smuggled 300 kilograms of cocaine from Argentina, which is obviously false. Um, you know, and then of course they also claimed that the CIA was working with the Ukrainians to undermine Donald Trump's presidential campaign and so forth. This is how they particularly targeted Ukraine and try to undermine it. Uh, well, that's what they do, and the horrible thing is that they pretend to be average Americans, even though they're, those employees are again sitting in Russia somewhere and using AI tools to generate phrases and speech that resembles local speech here in the United States, and they disguise themselves as and pretend to be just average Joe from next door. So that's how they do it. So um, also the same person, I read that in the Sun Sentinel newspaper, where the journalist did much less investigation than in the article that I'm showing you here. That journalist was mostly preoccupied with um, Dugan's activities against his boss, the sheriff, where Dugan was uh, doing the smearing campaigns against his chef, his boss, the sheriff. So I guess he wanted to be the sheriff himself. I don't know what was the reason for that. And he was even going as far as doxing uh, the sheriff's wife and daughter, and doing a lot of other illegal activities. And eventually, the FBI raided his house and in Palm Beach, but they failed to actually arrest him because, well, he probably knew about all this beforehand. Obviously, he had access to the sheriff's office. Mostly, maybe this is how he got that information. So he purchased a ticket to Canada, and he flew to Canada, and from Canada he flew to Moscow, where he got the political asylum. And I read recently that he became a Russian citizen, and now, but his work is not done. If you read this article to the end, you will see that he continues his work from overseas. and he continues to spread the misinformation, continues to set up websites, and my fear is that he continues to recruit other Americans to do Moscow's bidding here. So that's probably what is happening too, and why we're not investigating these cases and these situations. So I'm very much I'm very much disturbed by that, and that's what I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. That it runs much deeper than we think. Uh, I don't want to be an alarmist, but basically, when we read something online, we don't know how that was produced, and basically. We cannot expect every uh, user to be a forensic researcher and fact checker. Yes, if you are doing fact checking and you know how to do it, you have time to do it, and you can do it right, then yes, you can get to the true information. But that's not feasible or possible for every user that is out there. So again, to summarize, these are the key tactics how Russia amplifies its propaganda. You know, by using fake news sites, and I already showed you examples of Shem, Boston Times, San Francisco Chronicle. They're mimicking credible journalism. They're using social media bots. They obviously influence uh, expats, but what is even more disturbing is that they are recruiting disgruntled uh, police officers and other figures who are even not expats but born and raised Americans, uh, individuals with insider knowledge and credibility to push that disinformation. So you see, initially I thought we can talk about uh, expats and how the so-called Russian-speaking, Ukrainian-speaking community, certain individuals are electing to spread misinformation. But we all know about that. The point could be moot. We're already aware about that quite well. But what we may not be as deeply aware is that Kremlin's efforts are going much further than just this tiny community. So it goes much deeper into our society, and that's how they tailor the content and exploit our divisions, right? So, and it has a global impact. It shapes public opinion. It spreads disinformation and distrust in Ukraine and the West and the democracy as a whole. Uh, Obviously, these efforts undermine international support for Ukraine, and it creates divisions among us. So that's the global impact of all of that. So in conclusion, we need to think about the cost of ignoring disinformation. Russia's campaigns are sophisticated and well funded, uh, and we need robust countermeasures to protect our democracy. We do have an easy task, and I admit that. We do have a democracy, we do have the First Amendment that regulates the free speech and everything else. But I think we failed our regulatory powers, and this is where we need entities such as the Supreme Court and other people, lawyers and human rights advocates and free speech advocates to get together and create a framework of laws and rules for social media, for creating fake websites and how to countermeasure them. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a Supreme Court judge, but let me ask you this. We do, yes, social media networks is historically very new um, thing in our life. I admit that. I understand the challenge. But uh, so was the radio, so was the television at the time, right? And yet, our regulatory agencies, activists, ethical experts, and human rights activists, they got together at some point in time, and the radio broadcast and television broadcast, other types of media were meaningfully regulated to prevent exactly these things that we're observing now, right? So I refuse to believe that we are not smart enough to do the same thing if we want to with internet and social media resources. Because forgive me, but I don't remember, you know, Hitler's broadcast on the radio waves in the United States during the Second World War, or something like that. Somehow, even though the First Amendment existed back then, that never happened, right? So why this is happening now? Why Mr. Putin is allowed through his monetary resources and proxies to pretty much push his narratives here in the United States and with every ally that we have in Europe and worldwide. So that is my question. I mean, I have several questions. Again, I want to repeat that I'm puzzled why we cannot detect a major operation such as with Mr. Dugan. Uh, how are we detecting other bad actors and bad players? Why we are not detecting them early enough? And how we can create a meaningful framework of laws and regulations for social media. So that is what I wanted to talk today, and I highly appreciate that you invited me. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you very much, Larry. I open the panel for the questions. I'm sure we have quite a bit. I have a comment from Dr. Carol Smith, who had to leave. She says this is compelling and interesting and sounds like it needs more attention and more action. I'm very grateful for your expertise and dedication to educating us about this issue. And Dr. Deutsch, our former graduate dean, also asks, I think you partially answered this, but maybe there is more information you can tell us. Can you give us some specific examples of misinformation that the troll farms have been generating? You talked mostly about American-based agents and actors, but troll farms are in Russia. We hear from them. I think I heard about troll farms as long ago as 5 or 6 years. They were associated with the infamous Evgeny Prigozhin. But we should have some information on those places. They should be leaking. What can you tell about them?
Well, I see very little mentioning of any research into that inside the United States. Maybe there are agencies who are investigating them. Maybe there are federal agencies who are looking into that. Maybe they are not sharing with us the results of their investigations. I didn't see much. But what I see is that um, information coming from reputable investigative journalists such as Groziev and many others. And there are numerous examples of what those troll farms produce, such as baseless accusation of President Zelensky in acquiring 300 kilograms of cocaine in Argentina, to suggesting that Hillary Clinton is running the pizza parlor pizza place that is used for pedophilia or some. Sometimes they come up with such ridiculous ideas that you wouldn't even know how to approach them, but the thing is that they present it in such interesting way that public starts believing that. So I mean, this is mind-boggling, really.
Thank you. I see question from our moderator, Anara, please.
Thank you very much for your informative and timely, very timely presentation. And of course, Russia propaganda is very creative and focused on short-term, long-term goals. I would compare Russia propaganda to another Soviet invention like Kalashnikov, that it still should be addressed. And what could be done to address the issues of disinformation and hate propaganda and also hate to the democratic values at the local level, say in America, at regional level, and also at the global level? There certainly should be united efforts. And you probably know better the anatomy of this. Thank you.
Well, I agree with you. This is a real threat and underestimated and underappreciated. I think that we need at the local level to create grassroots movements and counter that propaganda as much as we can. I don't see any efforts like this at this time. I don't probably know how to create that. I tried something at my local level. I started a conversation with the local branch of the Democratic Party, but so far people are not much interested in that. I mean, maybe this is the part of the propaganda campaign, and maybe Mr. Putin somehow makes people underappreciate the threat. I mean, I don't know. At the global level, at the national level or global level, like I said, I expect uh, our regulatory agencies, the Supreme Court, uh, lawyers, associations, and associations of ethical experts, uh, because ethics is involved here as well, and human rights associations, to come up to a forum and create a framework on how to regulate that. And of course, once this is done, then probably issue a mandate to the law enforcement agencies to follow along those regulatory guidelines and detect and prevent, hopefully prevent, these situations from happening. Because, I mean, I do not understand how so much funds. The thing is that we do have very robust and very effective um, investigation units at the Department of Treasury, and they are doing a great job at monitoring money laundering operations and all things that financial fraud, right? Uh, but somehow, I'm sure they see all those movements of large sums of money, but I guess what stops them from acting further is that when they see that those funds are used to create, say, websites and spread information, well, then the First Amendment comes into play. Okay, well, Mr. Dugin has a right to say what he wants to say. Well, maybe Mr. Dugin is entitled to his opinion as a citizen, but when the funds are coming from American adversary, and this is a state actor, well, that is probably not his opinion. This is an opinion of Mr. Putin that he is pushing here. So he's basically he acts as a foreign agent, right? He is employed by them. If he received that much money to set up these operations, then he is not expressing his personal opinion. He is just expressing an opinion of his employer, in essence. But I guess this is where we have a disconnect between the regulatory part and law enforcement and the constitution and everything else. At least when I brought this up with law enforcement people, that's how this is their theory why we do not see enough action on those fronts.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Please think about more questions. We still have time. I have a comment here from our listener, from our student Leslie, who says U.S. intelligence agencies are still limited by how much time their employees can spend analyzing the data they gather, though even if they were to collect everything on the internet, and the FCC doesn't regulate the internet in the way it does radio or television. Can you talk a little bit about what you know about existing regulations? Well, censorship, if you wish.
Well, no, we are blessed to live in the country where indeed we do not have censorship, right? Uh, However, uh, we still have meaningful laws when it comes to free speech. I mean, nobody is allowed to scream fire in the theater filled with people or the stadium filled with people if there are no fire, right? I mean, because it would cause a stampede and people would be hurt and killed. So there are meaningful regulations, and that's why I think new laws are needed to be introduced, and the framework for such legal framework for such laws should be developed, right? But what I do not see is a desire for people to develop that, or even to talk about it. I mean, and thanks to Elon Musk, everybody is immediately switching to the defensive position and aggressiveness of being free speech absolutist. I mean, I appreciate that, but you know, then we are going to have these situations more and more, and this is unacceptable because again, you can express your own opinion, but when this is an opinion of your employer and you were engaged to express that opinion, I don't feel that it falls under the parameters of free speech.
Okay, thank you. I have another comment here from our producer, Larry Sherray. He said that Twitter General Counsel Jim Baker, who was fired by Musk, was also general counsel at the FBI, was involved in the government campaign that originated the fake Russia-Trump dossier. The Twitter files brought much to light about U.S. intelligence agencies being the source of domestic misinformation, and Twitter files show that the FBI directed social media to censor. All 50 former FBI agents were fired from Twitter. Do you care to comment, please?
Well, we do have we do have problems with with law enforcement agencies as well, and if but I mean, the law enforcement agencies are supposed to implement the laws and make sure that the laws are followed, and make arrests for people who do not follow those, break those laws, and things like that. But the thing is that definitely those agencies are not designed to create laws or create rules that they think are right or wrong, or use social media in the way to manipulate the laws. So it seems like uh, these situations actually create distrust in our government as a whole, uh, which should not be the case, because just because a group of rogue agents decided to use social media to manipulate the public opinion, it doesn't mean that the entire agency is bad or the entire concept is bad. But again, it doesn't mean that appropriate agencies, such as appropriate bodies, such as the Supreme Court, right, could not go and create meaningful legal framework that would be later on implemented by the law enforcement agencies. So let's not mix those two together. We have authorities that create laws and approve laws, such as Congress, uh, and the Supreme Court, and then we have agencies that implement laws. Though those are two different bodies, and they have two different functions.
Thank you. Thank you. Please think about more questions. I may ask more, maybe on the light side, practical question. I use Facebook a lot, and I try not to get involved into meaningless, exchange with uh, people on Facebook. But what I noticed is a twilight zone between possibly real accounts and names and definitely fake accounts and names. For example, some websites would post a picture of Crimea uh, under Crimea, Ukraine, and immediately you see some real people or trolls posting Crimea is Russia, and then a chain of back and forth, meaningless answers. I do not participate, but sometimes I looked up who is actually posting those replies that Crimea is Russia. And those are not Russians. They seem to be bona fide accounts with people from some very different country, like from South America or Africa. And these people seem real. At least they have all the entourage of real account, friends and former posts, but I have an impression that they have been created for this purpose because in none of these cases their Facebook history is very deep. Um, it all fits on one or two pages, maybe.
I think you're right. Well, there is a mixture of those situations. Obviously, mm, there are many accounts that appear to be very real, because the Russian troll farms are using more and more sophisticated software and AI tools that enable them to create very sophisticated profiles. And of course, the profile starts actively participates in discussions only after they gain enough friends and even fake family members to appear as a real account. So that's one case. The second case, indeed, you may look at very real people who already been heavily influenced by Russian propaganda, and they started to express this view that was induced onto them. And the third, there are on the ground agents such as Mr. Dugan that are employed by the Russian government directly or indirectly, and there are so many operatives in South America, in Africa, in Europe, especially Eastern Europe. We know about the cases in Slovenia where they already arrested several spies who, by the way, uh, presented themselves as the native people from Latin America. I forgot, either Argentina or something, and they posed as expats to Slovenia from Latin America, but in fact they were the Russians, right? So this is very elaborate web of spies and networks, and that's how they do it.
Thank you very much. And if we have no more questions from our panel of viewers, I will need to thank Mr. Poltavtsev for his expertise. And I have one more question. Leslie, please.
Yes, hello. Hopefully, this won't turn into a meaningless back and forth, but I just wanted to ask you your opinion about Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who has spread various, well, let's say, some views that Russia also tends to promote, such as that, let's see, one of them. Well, she's promoted the idea that there are U.S. funded biolabs in Ukraine and that Russia has legitimate security concerns, quote unquote, about Ukraine joining NATO. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you so much for your question, Leslie. I highly appreciate that. Well, I think you pointed out quite correctly that, uh, unfortunately, this nominee uh, engaged previously in spreading misinformation, and I do not understand why such person can be nominated and approved, confirmed as our Director of National Intelligence. As a matter of fact, uh, I wrote on my Facebook, like a meme. I just wrote that why. I mean, if we are interested in government efficiency, let's cut the middle woman out of this equation and outsource DNI directly to Putin, and just be done with that. Because why pay her a salary altogether? So the thing is that I don't know what this person thinks and how she thinks, but naturally there are no biolabs in Ukraine. I've never heard about it, but let me add to that, in case you didn't see that. It goes much deeper than just biolabs. Another infamous and yet widely popular uh, bioweapon uh, rumor that is spread is that Ukraine allegedly is using geese and even mosquitoes that they allegedly implant dangerous bioagents and sent over to Russia. So I mean, if you tell me how one can command geese, I would highly appreciate it, because I'm not aware about any methodology how to train and or mosquitoes. How
You
to
may be you may be surprised. Actually, a patent for mosquito carrying some load has been a U.S. patent, which exists in nature. So you have all kinds of weird background for any theory. But it would be interesting to see the investigation on biolabs, because, of course, there's a lot of treaties on biological weapons we know about, and we constantly get leaks from ex-Soviet and Russian facilities on labs which breed all kinds of microorganisms, of course. So let's hope they do not get loose. Thank you once again, Mr. Poltavtsev. We spent a very informative hour, and we hope you will be one day back on our program with some kind of interesting specific study. Of course, this is a field for any student. If my university students of criminal justice department hear me, here are a lot of topics for your papers, just for combination um, interdisciplinary work on IT and criminal justice. Here you are. And as an IT expert, you gave us very good introduction in this unfortunate happenings. Thank you very much from our program. And yes, please.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was my privilege to be here, and I highly appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. And this concludes our 143rd week of Ukraine podcasts. Thanks everyone who participated. Slava Ukraini.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава.
Героям слава.